Ferrari is quietly furious, and the entire paddock has no idea how big this story actually is. Behind closed doors, deep inside the Ferrari motorhome after the Las Vegas Grand Prix, voices were raised, meetings ran late, and engineers stared at data they wish they never saw. Because according to multiple insiders, Ferrari believes that a recent FIA rule change didn't just catch McLaren by surprise. It may have directly changed the entire outcome of the World Championship. And the anger is not public, it's simmering privately, boiling under the surface of Fred Vasseur's camp, waiting to explode at exactly the wrong moment. Lando Norris should have been celebrating in Vegas. He should have been walking into Qatar as the overwhelming favorite to win the Drivers' Championship. He drove like a champion, fought Verstappen, and looked like he had full control of the season. But then, within minutes of the race finishing, everything collapsed. Both McLaren cars, Norris and Piastri, were disqualified for excessive plank wear. Their second and fourth place finishes erased. Norris, instead of extending his lead, suddenly found himself only 24 points ahead of Verstappen and Piastri, who are now tied behind him. A 20-point gap vanished in seconds. Championship momentum gone. And Ferrari? They're watching all of this with a mix of frustration, confusion, and genuine anger because they've been here before, and they know exactly how damaging this rule can be. Ferrari's season started rough, but when Hamilton won the sprint in China, it felt like a turning point. Until it wasn't. Because just hours later, Hamilton's car failed the same plank wear rule, the same rule that destroyed McLaren in Las Vegas. Ferrari had to raise their car, change suspension setups, and sacrifice performance for the rest of the season. Lewis Hamilton, who loves a low-riding car with aggressive rake, was forced to compromise. Leclerc lost balance. The entire Scuderia spent months adjusting their ride height and tuning their suspension, all because of plank wear sensitivity that simply didn't exist a few years ago. And then comes the twist, the part Ferrari is truly upset about. This season, the FIA quietly introduced a tougher monitoring system. No more random checks, no more spot inspections. According to journalist Jorge Piero and multiple paddock sources, the FIA has now begun checking every single car for plank wear, every weekend, every race, without exceptions. And Ferrari is somewhat annoyed. That's the polite version. Privately, people inside the team are saying something completely different. They believe the tightened checks are inconsistent. They believe the rule change, made quietly, has had a bigger impact on the championship than anyone wants to admit. And they believe that the timing couldn't be more suspicious. Let's break down why Ferrari is frustrated. When McLaren was disqualified in Las Vegas, Norris wasn't low on fuel. He lifted and coasted heavily, but he had enough to provide the mandatory 1-liter sample. What actually caught him wasn't fuel. It was the plank. And according to FIA insiders, Las Vegas was an isolated situation, meaning the circuit surface, bumps, and the desperation for performance forced teams to run insanely low. But Ferrari knows this explanation by heart because they lived it in Shanghai. When Hamilton got disqualified earlier this season, Ferrari were told the same thing. It's a one-off, don't worry. But it wasn't. It affected their setup philosophy for the next 10 races. Ferrari had to raise the rear. They had to adjust the suspension. Their drivers were suddenly told to lift and coast mid-race to avoid excessive wear, while teams like Red Bull and McLaren pushed flat out. Ferrari took the hit early, McLaren took it late. And now the championship narrative has completely changed because of plank wear, a rule that was never meant to decide titles, but is suddenly deciding everything. Inside the Ferrari garage, the frustration isn't just about Norris losing points. It's about consistency. It's about transparency. It's about the FIA saying, we check every car the same way, but teams privately whispering that the checks have been harsher, more frequent, and far more selective this year. Ferrari has always been sensitive to underfloor regulations, the cost cap scandals, the engine mapping controversies, the plank checks. It's always the same story. And this year, the FIA's new monitoring system has impacted them twice as hard as anyone else. The irony is brutal. Ferrari suffered from the rule in China. McLaren suffered from it in Las Vegas. And the championship, which should have been clean, intense, and decided on track, is now hanging on a wooden plank that nobody can see until the car is inspected. That's what has Ferrari annoyed. A world title is being shaped not by race pace, not by driver talent, not by strategy, but by microscopic measurements under the car. The difference between legal and illegal is sometimes less than 1 millimeter. One bump, one curb, one moment of bottoming out. And inside the Ferrari team, whispers have started. This rule is too sensitive, too unpredictable, too decisive. When a single measurement can destroy a season, teams lose confidence. They stop pushing. Ferrari is already lifting and coasting more than their rivals. Hamilton and Leclerc have complained multiple times this season that they're being asked to slow down to protect the plank. How are they supposed to challenge for a podium or a win when they're told to drive with one hand tied behind their back? And now, Ferrari looks at Las Vegas and sees the same problem hitting their rival. McLaren lowered the car too much, begging for performance, desperate to beat Red Bull and take the championship lead. And the FIA hammer struck immediately. Ferrari understand the pain because they lived the same nightmare earlier this year. But they don't understand why the FIA suddenly tightened inspections mid-season, why the checks became harsher, why the rule enforcement changed when the championship pressure peaked. The most important line came from the journalist. This has been the year of the DSQs. Ferrari isn't annoyed at McLaren. They're annoyed at the FIA narrative. They're annoyed that a championship that should be decided by pure racing is instead being shaped by technical traps. They're annoyed that their 2025 hopes were damaged early by the same issue. And now? They're annoyed that a private rule change, monitoring plank wear on every car instead of random spot checks, is only now being talked about publicly. And here's where the storyline becomes even more complicated. Ferrari can't lower their car for the final races. Not after China, not after the FIA crackdown, not with this rule haunting every top team. They're forced to run safe, conservative, slower. Meanwhile, McLaren will now be terrified to run aggressive setups in Qatar or Abu Dhabi. And Red Bull? They benefit the most when their rivals are scared of the curbs. Ferrari knows the championship is now unstable. If Norris, Piastri, or even Verstappen push too hard in Qatar and bottom out the car, another DSQ could easily decide the entire world title. Ferrari is angry because they understand that this isn't just a rule. It's a championship weapon, one that teams can't control, one that can destroy months of work in seconds, and one that might make the 2025 title the most controversial finish of the decade. As the paddock heads into Qatar, tensions are high. Ferrari is frustrated. McLaren is panicking. Red Bull is smiling quietly. And the FIA insists everything is fair. But deep inside the garages, engineers are whispering, drivers are worried, team principals are nervous, because if one more car fails plank wear, just one, the championship is over. This isn't just frustration, this is a storm building behind the scenes. A storm Ferrari is tired of fighting. And a storm the FIA may have just unleashed at the worst possible time.